Hi everyone, it's Nichol Spohr and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be coloring some embossed backgrounds created with brand new Altenew embossing folders with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. This is my favorite technique with embossing folders, and it creates beautiful no-line coloring results that are dimensional and so much fun to look at. Now, they might seem intimidating, but I promise that it really isn't. If you like to do no-line coloring or you like to color with your Zig markers, this is a great technique. It's really no different than coloring in a large background for any other type of card or coloring. You're simply coloring the embossed area. Today, I am going to ink up my background really lightly with some Simon Says Stamp SEAFOAM Positively Saturated ink. Yes, it does add some color to the embossed areas, but when we color over it with our Zig markers, it should color up most of that pretty nicely. I don't worry too much if a little of it shows through. It just kind of serves as almost a little bit of an outline. But it helps because I really wanted my sky to be blue in the background. Now, I did emboss this image on a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel of Bristol Smooth cardstock. This is the FOLKTALE Birds 3D embossing folder, and you can see that the detail on this is absolutely amazing. Now, one thing I want to mention in my video today is I have sped up the coloring quite a bit because it did take a while. All things considered, and that isn't even doing the finishing details for the cards like adding greetings, which I did not film for this video. The unedited part was 3.5 hours long. It is a lot of coloring because it's 4 complete cards. And so I wanted to include the coloring for the cards, and so I've sped it up today. I hope everyone understands. I know that a lot of times I try to leave it a little slower, but I felt like this was the best way to do this today. I started with the branch and I used dark brown and beige, and now I'm going to color in one of the birds. Something that I have not been doing a lot lately, but I thought it would be helpful for this video, is I'm including the colors of the markers I'm using on the screen somewhere. I've tried to avoid where I'm coloring if at all possible, but I've also listed the information in the description down below the video here on YouTube, as well as on my blog post for this video. I do want to also mention, if you are watching this video right when it comes out in a few days after, if you go over to my blog, there is a giveaway from Altenew. They're giving away a whole bunch of great prizes for the release of these embossing folders, so definitely check that out. The birds are so beautifully detailed, you guys. I absolutely love these. For this bird, I started with sand and oatmeal for the wing, and now I'm using a little mid-brown and oatmeal. And we're simply going to just kind of keep mixing colors for this bird. I had no real specific plan. That's a little oatmeal and the blender for the belly. And then we're going to go back to a little bit of sand, I think, and oatmeal for the top of the bird. Oh, and I missed some of his feathers hanging down. So I'm going to go ahead and color these in. I didn't follow any hard and fast rules for my birds. I just kind of went with my gut and colored it the way I felt like it. I try to work in small areas as I'm coloring, as I find that really works the best and allows me the most control to hopefully not miss anything. So there's in fact a little bit of the tree, so the tree branch comes down, which I already colored, but it also comes up back behind this bird, and I missed a little area that I will come back and color eventually. Now, for the beak and for the bird's feet, I started with scarlet red, pale orange, and then I even went in with sometimes mid-brown, sometimes sand, because I felt like the scarlet red was a little too orangey and not quite as muted, I guess, as I was looking for, but I do like that orangey color, and so I just kind of added a little extra to it. Let's finish the branch coming up with our dark brown and beige. Be sure when you're using your lighter marker to blend out the darker marker, you clean the tip of that marker often. You can see my little scrap paper up in the top left corner of the screen, as this allows you to have a clean tip when blending. For the leaves, I've used light green and yellow green, and then a little bright yellow for the inside of my flower. And then I want a pop of color. My branch, the birds are all fairly neutral, I guess I want to say, and very muted. And so the flowers here are going to serve as a beautiful little pop of color in this peachy red color, which is pink flamingo, light carmine, and carmine. And I'm loving that, and I think we're just going to keep it consistent all the way through. I'm not going to do a whole bunch of different colors. They're all going to be red. So anytime you see a flower here on this card, it will be this color combination. All of my greenery will also be this color combination. And then let's color in this little group here. Another tip when you're coloring an embossing folder image like this is to go ahead and grab your embossing folder if you need to and reference it. There were a couple of areas when I was coloring any of these different panels that you're going to see today where sometimes if you're not exactly sure if that's a flower petal or if that's going to be a leaf, you can check your embossing folder and it will kind of help guide you, especially if your background remains white and you don't add some color to it. Adding the blue ink to this did kind of help add some definition, but definitely reference your embossing folder as needed. Because these panels are so detailed today, I'm going to keep my embellishment to a minimum, plus we're not going to be adding a ton of extra layers. These are all basically one layer cards, maybe with a little sentiment strip or whatever here and there, but I'm going to show you some of my favorite ways to add some greetings to these, or you'll see that those ways. I'm not actually going to do the greetings here on camera. For my second bird, it's going to have a blue tone to it. We're using blue gray, haze blue, a little platinum brown in areas over the blue, and then going back to our scarlet red, sand, and oatmeal for the beaks and some of the parts of the birds and just all those things. I'm just going to kind of keep working the colors together until I have it the way I want. The oatmeal over the blue inking, you can see that it definitely picks up a little of the blue undertone, so I really kind of just went with it and added some haze blue to some of the detail on the embossed area. I thought it worked nicely since this bird is blue. And if you don't want to add greetings to it, you could always simply frame a piece like this too. I think it would be so pretty framed up, especially for any bird lovers out there. The details on these Altenew embossing folders is absolutely incredible. So we'll color in the top of this bird to kind of match the underbelly. I added a little more sand to this. Because I added some sand here and it has a little bit of an orangey tone to it, I am going to go ahead and do that to the belly of this bird. So just a little tiny touch, and then pulling the color out with the oatmeal color as well as the blender. And then I need to add the rest of the wing kind of tucked along the side. I checked the embossing folder for that. The beak. For the eyes on my birds, I'm using a black jelly roll pen to add that detail in, and I'm not worrying too much about any of the blue showing around what would be the white area of the eye. I think it's not super noticeable that it's blue, and it's not so overwhelming that it takes away. You could always go in with a white pen if you wanted to first. And I am going to make this eye on the bluebird a little bit bigger, but I'm going to wait for the jelly roll pen to dry first. And I'm referencing my embossing folder again because it is kind of hard to tell what's a petal and what's a leaf. And we'll just color the rest of this in real quick. Now on this first panel, I do have a fun little tip. Because all of my cards are single layers, I didn't, the rainbow background, scallop background we're doing here in a minute, I don't really think that one needs it. And then there's an all over floral background, which also doesn't need it. But I could have probably done this same technique on the other floral, the one at the end of this video. We're going to add a very simple embossed frame around the sides. My friend Lori Willison does this all the time on her cards, and it's one of my favorite things that she does. And it's an instant way to add a little bit of a frame if you don't want to trim any of your background off or mat it on anything. So I'm taking a score buddy, and about 1/4 of an inch in on all 4 sides, I am going to score a straight line. And when I flip that over, it's going to give my bird background the illusion of being framed up. Then I'm going to add my sentiments. I have a little stamped sentiment and a sentiment strip, and we'll even add some hearts after bit as well. Let's go to our all over floral background. This is for the adventurous, or what I like to call extra of us crafters. This is the flower bed embossing folder. Now you could do like a highlight technique where you only highlight a portion of this and color in maybe just one flower or something. And I think that would be gorgeous. It is gorgeous white like this. You could add a beautiful gold foil type of sentiment on top, or whatever the case may be. I wanted to go all out extra, and so I'm coloring the entire panel. I did pick the part of the area I wanted to emboss. I should mention these are all 6x6 embossing folders, so they're going to emboss a much bigger area than an A2 sized background. So I picked the area I wanted to emboss, and then I'm going to color it in. Now I kind of got a little heavy-handed with my first little daisy here, and it's a little grayer than I'd like, but that's okay. I'll get better maybe as we go on. But I did keep some of my flowers quote unquote white. So the flowers that are colorful really pop against this background. This background did take a little bit of time to color simply because it's huge and I colored a lot, but I think it's worth it. I love a floral background like this, and I know it's so hard to see in real life, but the texture you get by coloring your embossed backgrounds with markers is amazing. I am using Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers because that's something I really feel comfortable with a no-line coloring type of look, and I really love the results. Maybe you like watercolor, or you like Copics, or other kinds of markers or colored pencils. There really is no right or wrong. It's just kind of whatever technique or marker tool that you feel comfortable using. Try it out, see what you think. A lot of times with these backgrounds, it looks worse, maybe is how I should say this, before it looks better. And that is kind of how it goes for any type of coloring like this. It maybe doesn't always look amazing right out of the gate, but just keep going. I didn't really love the first few petals that I colored on this peony, but I just kept going, and I don't even think that it's super noticeable later on, once the whole thing is colored, that I didn't love how I colored those first few petals. And it is a pretty big flower image, and it does take a little bit of time to color. I got impatient and I skipped over and did a couple of other things before coming back. I will highly recommend that if you're going to color something bright pink, bright red, that you color the other, in this case, flowers around it first, and then color in the pink or red colors. So I kind of get high enough into this flower that I want to do the white daisy, and I think even the yellow flower and the leaves around the top where I'm going to be coloring pink. I went ahead and did those, and then I came back to finish this. With a water-based marker like the Zig markers, if you accidentally touch a light color, let's say yellow, to the pink, it could drag that pink out into the yellow area really easily. So I really try to be careful. I have found that over the years, I used to not be very careful, and I'd get so mad because there would be an area that bled and didn't look the way I wanted it to. It's starting to look pretty. For this flower bed embossing folder, I did reference my embossing folder quite often to kind of help tell me, because some of the leaves look a little bit like flower petals, and really there's not a huge right or wrong for most of this. Some of it you can kind of get by with, but I did try to reference it as I could to hopefully get things colored correctly. And that when you see me holding it up at an angle, that's me trying to figure out where I want to go. So going back, coloring in white flower up here. We'll also color in a leaf and another flower. I went really bright and colorful. We're bringing out all of the springtime vibes with this one. For the center of my daisies, I forgot to mention this, I'm going to go with bright yellow and a little yellow, and then we're going to take dark brown around the center and just do some little dots for detail. Just using the very tip of my marker. For the yellow flowers, we're going to start with bright yellow, then go in with yellow and finish with pale yellow. With flowers, I tend to try not to blend out all the way. I want to keep some of that nice detailing to each flower petal. So I will often kind of go back and forth and just try to leave some of the marker lines, I guess, in the image. Same with the leaves. I try to leave some nice texture in the leaves. Just basically trying not to overthink it and worry too much about blending it out too much. Let's quickly color in the rest of this big flower. We'll super speed color this. Before we move on to the remaining flowers. I always just consider the embossed area like a stamped image, and so I use the embossed areas as my outline, if you will, and try to color like each individual flower petal and things like that. If you break it down into smaller chunks, it makes it a lot more doable. The more color we add, the more I love this. And this is another beautiful panel, so much detail, so incredibly gorgeous. I did add a little pop of red, so we have a little bit darker flower here. This is going to be carmine and light carmine with a little bit of a blender to help keep some of that nice detail of our flower petals. So carmine first. We're going to do a little greenery down here along the bottom. That's light green and yellow green. And then our light carmine will pull the carmine color up. Following each of those flower petals. And finally, we're going to grab our blender and using kind of a sweeping motion back and forth, we're going to blend out each individual flower petal. And you can see that leaves lots of fantastic texture. So pretty. On my yellow flowers, I'm going back in with bright yellow and adding like some little dotted texture in kind of the center of each petal once I'm done doing all of my shading, and I love that extra detail that it adds to the flower petals. We are going to finish coloring all of this with basically repetition now with our greens and yellows and pinks until the entire panel is colored in. For cards like this, they really don't require extra detail, I don't think. You don't want to cover up all of your beautiful coloring. I went with very simple sentiments to finish off each of my cards today that don't cover up the background, but still convey the nice message, and you're left with a beautiful card where the background really is the star of the show. So after a couple of kind of all over background coloring cards, our next background is not going to be the entire background, but it is going to utilize a lot of colors. It's going to be what I think is going to appear to be the simplest card today, and probably is the simplest card, but I think it's a showstopper all on its own, and that is going to be the scalloped frame, which is gorgeous and beautiful. I love the size of it, and it can be used in so many different ways. And as I was looking at the scallop frame and trying to figure out what I wanted to do with this frame and kind of still keep in my theme of coloring in embossed areas with the Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers, I thought it would be super fun to color mini rainbows all the way around our scallop. So it is a lot of flip-flop between marker colors, but I love this. Now this is a pretty big image, and it's not going to completely fit on an A2 size card. When I'm using a circle shape on an A2 size card that's too big, my favorite way to use that is shifting it off to one side, usually the right side. So this is slightly shifted off to the right and down along the bottom, so it has a couple of little straight edges there. But I did try to fill the majority of the background with my scalloped frame. We are using all of my favorite colors of Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers together here. The reds are carmine and light carmine. Pink is peach pink and sugared almond pink. The orange is orange and pale orange. The yellow is bright yellow and yellow. Our green is light green and yellow green. Turquoise is turquoise green and green shadow. Blue is blue and light blue. And violet will be violet and light violet. And I am going to repeat these all the way around. What I found worked best for me, and what makes this forgiving because I didn't really have to measure out my scallops, is that because it goes off one side of the card, as long as I work in one area and come out around from where I start and make that even, I don't really have to worry that it meets up perfectly. I started with the outer edge of my scallop, and then for the inner edge, I didn't want it to match exactly, so I will shift over my rainbow just a little bit, and I'm going to start the rainbow again around in that inner scallop circle. The only difference is I'm going to just go opposite of what I did on the outer ring. So on the outer ring, I did red and then pink. On the inner ring, I'm going to do pink and red. I hope that makes sense. So then I did orange and yellow on the outer ring. I'll do yellow and orange. I'm just flip-flopping them. It's basically the same thing. I don't even know if anyone else would really notice that. But I wanted to mention that that is how I did this and how I planned my circles and made it very rainbow and very, very fun. This took in real time about 42 minutes to color. It is a lot of flipping back and forth. You could definitely add some bigger sentiments in the center. You could even add an embellishment in the center. You could do like add a photo in the center, layered circles. I mean, there are lots and lots of ways to finish this off. And definitely you could stick to a little bit easier way of coloring if you wanted to. Maybe just do a couple of colors, or, oh, my dog is snoring. So sorry. So there's a lot of ways to do this. On the inner ring, it is embossed as well. And at the end, I am going to take some gray markers to frame that up. I thought about doing it in a color, but I ultimately decided that I felt like it would look better this way. I'm going to speed through the rest of the coloring of this. I found it easiest to work in one area and work my way out. I did make one error that I was able to fix. I think I colored something purple that was supposed to be blue, and it was down kind of in the corner. Yeah, it is. It's down along the bottom edge. It's definitely a little bit darker than anything else, but I don't think it's super noticeable, and maybe if I hadn't said anything, it wouldn't be noticeable to you either, but I was almost completely done coloring this, and so I thought, oh, you know what, it's going to be fine. I'm not starting over for that. In fact, I could have trimmed down my background to probably 4 by 5 1/4 and could have hidden it all together, but I just left it. I just love these little mini rainbows all the way around. Or I love that they can be turned into little mini rainbows all the way around, I guess is what I should say. So this is our third background. Again, this is the scalloped frame. And as I was talking earlier, I kind of started on that one point along the left side, and I worked my way up and around, and now I'm working my way kind of down and around so that it works out and evens out as far as color goes. if I was doing the whole thing, I probably would have needed to plan out and make sure that I was going to have an equal amount of rainbow arcs all the way around. Another idea that I think would be really fun is to only emboss half of this circle, like along one of the edges of your cardstock, or you could even, emboss it in the center and cut it in half. And you could only do half of it, and it could almost be like a rainbow of mini rainbows. This is a really versatile embossing folder. Another idea that I think would be fun is you could almost turn this into a sunflower and color in all of the little rainbows in yellows, obviously, and then do the center with a dark brown. And I think it would be kind of a unique take on a sunflower image. Or any flower. You could turn it into any flower, really. Now, once I get done with this part, I'm going to take dark gray and light gray, and I'm going to go around the inner edge of the circle with my dark gray first, kind of drawing a very thin line all the way around. Once I have that little thin line all the way around, I'm going to take light gray and blend out that darker gray line to help frame up the center of the panel. I'm going to leave the center white and stamp some rainbow greetings in the center to finish this off, keeping it really simple since we've got a lot going on with the scallop circle. Our final card today features the SYLVAN Baroque 3D embossing panel. We're going to go back to the technique that we used a lot in the beginning of this video, where I added some ink to the background first and then I colored over it. This time we are using a little spring Simon Says Stamp Positively Saturated ink to color the background, so it's a little greener than the first one. And then I am going to color again with my markers right on top. We're going to do a yellow and limey green color combination. And once we're done coloring, we're going to splatter some white gouache all over the surface. So this one's going to have a little bit of distressing to it, adding a little something on top of the colored images. I was really feeling the yellow lime teal color combination here, so I did not pull in any additional colors, and I love how it turned out. Because my flowers are going to be yellow, I tried to not color too much of the spring Positively Saturated ink over the flowers, since blue is going to show through a little bit. I don't mind it too much, but I did try to avoid it where possible. If you don't want to color over some inking like I'm doing here, you can always go in with a watercolor wash around your image if you like. I'm not super good at that. I always tend to make a mess, and this is definitely the faster, easier way to go. I am going to speed through this coloring real quick and show you the splatter. I would love to know in the comments what your favorite embossing folder is from the release or from this video today, and also what your favorite way is to use 3D embossing folders. And isn't it amazing how far embossing folders has come? I remember when I first started paper crafting and card making many years ago, and just how excited I was about embossing folders, and just to see the advances and how incredible the detailing is on the ones today is just amazing. It just amazes me. For some of the flourishes in this design, I did add a little bit more of the teal color combination, but I almost felt like it was too teal. So what I like to do in that instance is I like to take a little bit of the yellow green, which is really limey, and add a little bit of that to the aqua teal color combination, which I'll show you here in a minute. And it really helps kind of tone it down or make it blend a little better, I guess I'd say. So there I added a little bit of that limey green and then just blended it out with green shadow. We're going to do the same thing to this big flourish coming down out at the bottom. I started with turquoise green, then added green shadow, and finally we will blend in a little bit of that yellow green and blend out with green shadow again, and I love it. So to make this a little less perfect, I'm going to place this in my splatter box, and I am going to add a little water to the white gouache that was already in there. I didn't even add any extra, just kind of re-wet it, and I'm going to generously splatter white speckles all over this background, just distressing it and adding a little bit of interest. Then I'm going to let this completely dry all the way. I'm going to take Hello Greetings and add them to all of my cards. All of the designs have a few little, you guessed it, heart accents to finish them up. And that is going to be it, my friends, for these Altenew 3D embossing folders, part of the March 2022 release. So let's take a little peek at all 4 finished cards, starting with our FOLKTALE Birds 3D embossing folder card. Next, we have the scalloped frame of rainbows, the flower bed card, and finally the SYLVAN Baroque. Thank you guys so much for joining me today for these 3D embossing folder cards colored with Zig Clean Color Real Brush markers. The supplies I used to create my cards are listed and linked below the video here on YouTube. Here is another video featuring 3D embossing folders that you might be interested in. I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to my Patreon members. If you would like to become a member of Patreon, please click the link in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, and don't forget to click the notification bell to always be notified when I have a new card making video. Thank you so much for joining me today, and we'll see you next time.